Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our third in a series of 5 webinars that we'll be doing about the Wallace research and focusing on the 5 key practices. Today we're going to be talking about managing people, data, and processes to foster school improvement. And this is in partnership with the Wallace Foundation and NASP, who have been working together on putting together this webinar series. So the Wallace Foundation has a publication called The School Principal as Leader, Guiding Schools to Better Teaching and Learning. And so since the year 2000, the Wallace Foundation has published more than 70 reports on leadership. They are one of the major organizations that study principal leadership. So the commitments that NASP has with the Wallace Foundation include NASP is a huge advocate for elementary and middle school principals and other education leaders who have a commitment to children. And so we have partnered with the Wallace Foundation, who has a very similar commitment as we do as far as improving the learning environment for disadvantaged children and making sure that the arts is very vital in schools. So, and looking ahead, as I said, since 2000, Wallace has supported states and districts in developing improved leadership models for principals to better their schools. And they have touched 24 states and numerous other urban school districts in this work. Currently, the Wallace Foundation is involved with a project called the Principal Pipeline, and this is a 5-year undertaking that they have in place, helping districts develop larger corps of effective school principals and aspiring leaders. So they're really looking at the succession planning in the district and really preparing those teacher leaders to move into the assistant principalship and principals to move into the principalship. So since 2011, there are 6 school districts that have become participants in this initiative: Charlotte-Mecklenburg, Denver, Gwinnett County in Georgia, Hillsborough County in Florida, New York City, and Prince George's County, Maryland. So the 5 key practices include shaping a vision of academic success for all students, creating a climate hospitable to education, cultivating leadership in others, improving instruction, and today we're going to be talking about managing people, data, and processes to foster school improvement. So here I am. I'm Deborah Tyler. I am the Associate Executive Director for NASP, and joining me today will be Robin Pender, who is Principal at Homestead Elementary School in the Cumberland County School District in Crossville, Tennessee. And so I want to share a little bit of information about Robin as I introduce her. So Mrs. Robin Pender holds a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, and an education specialist degree from Tennessee Technological University in Cookeville, Tennessee. She served as teacher, assistant principal, and coach before becoming the principal of Homestead Elementary School in 2007. She has received Model and Master Reading Awards. She's been a coordinator. The school has received various awards that include being the first National Lighthouse School of Excellence. And in addition to the awards bestowed upon the school, Mrs. Pender has also been a recipient of various awards. So most currently, she's been recognized by NASP as a National Distinguished Principal of the Year. She has led numerous staff development trainings, mentored new administrators, and presented at multiple conferences throughout the state and the nation. So welcome, Robin.
I'm very excited about being here. Thank you, Ms. Tyler.
So let's begin by having you talk a little bit about Homestead Elementary.
Well, I just feel like that my life is a bit of a fairy tale. This is my 9th year as principal at Homestead. Our building is actually 75 years old. It was built back in the 30s with President Roosevelt's plan to stimulate the economy by providing work and homes for displaced miners and farmers. So we've just celebrated this past year our 75th anniversary. We began with about 250 homes and families that came to Homestead at that time. This is my 22nd year in education. I have a dream job and I love it. This is definitely my home away from home. The hard work, integrity, and standard of excellence that built Homestead that many years ago still, I believe, exists today.
So why don't you walk us through a little bit of the demographics for your school?
We have a lot of Bulldog Pride. That is our mascot there. Our student body is 800 plus, beginning at age 3 with a comprehensive development classroom and going through 8th grade. We are one of 4 feeder schools for one of our local high schools. We take every opportunity to brag on our young'uns.
Great. So talking about some of the special initiatives that you have in place, I know that you and your staff are very steadfast in the 3 R's plus 1.
Yes, we are. We used to talk about reading, writing, arithmetic when we were in education, didn't even spell those correctly, and now we have these 3 new R words in Tennessee: relevancy, rigor, and relationships. And I always try to put relationships first in all that we do here at Homestead, and we've added that one, relentless, because to me, we're bulldogs and we're just never going to give back up from that. We have added the superhero symbol because I believe that educators everywhere truly are superheroes. At Homestead, we try to emphasize life skills, character development, emotional intelligence, and balance that with meeting those high academic standards and rigor. As we look at data today and think about that, I want to encourage everybody to be reminded that every one of those numbers represents a child's life, and that's really important to me.
That's very significant. Thank you. And then here's some continued recipes that you have for success at your school.
Basically, this is our formula for success, that we all work together, that we all contribute, that we are called to this work, and that we work really hard to make a difference. We do have strong community involvement as well as a family support, and our students are the best in the country, working very hard. And I would put my teachers up against any.
That says a lot. So I know that when we have talked previously, you really feel that the main foundation in your school really sits on the power of your professional learning communities.
Absolutely. That team cohesiveness is absolutely critical. Our teachers have many different roles, and they have to encourage our students and guide them and counsel them, and we all try to work together to make a difference for our students and have positive change in our community. And it's our hope that through those professional learning communities that the teacher's job can be more productive and rewarding as we get to know each other and develop a stronger team spirit and a family atmosphere while we're making a difference for our students.
Great. So I love this quote that you have here from Albert Einstein, and really talking about teaching versus learning.
Yes, when we first introduced PLCs several years ago, we talked about the difference and that transition from the sage on the stage, if you will, in that lecture environment to more of a collaborative learning environment. And it's really not about what you're saying or what you're teaching. It's about what the students are learning. And we committed at that time that we would not continue doing things expecting something different, but that we would honor Mr. Einstein's philosophy in that change is okay and it can make us better and help us to improve.
Great. And so I know that a lot of the foundation of your work has centered on the work of Rick DeFore.
Yes, ma'am. That was the book, The Leaders of Learning, that we based our PLCs on. We do a lot of different things in our PLCs. We look at data, looking line by line at individual children, their progress, their growth. We do book studies together. We're currently doing the Principles of Oz as a book study. We share strategies in our planning and work toward that together. And we realize that none of us know what all of us know. And so we have to work together to continue that. And we want this to be a forever kind of initiative, not something that just starts and stops, but that it will remain active and alive as long as Homestead is here.
Right, and you know, I mean, schools have been doing the work around professional learning communities for some time, and I think there's been a lot of lessons we've learned with this as educators, and what I find is every professional learning community in a building is different. To me, they each have their own individual DNA, and so when we had talked earlier, you had expressed to me the journey that you took as a leader to really establish the PLCs, and I think it's really important because perhaps we're going to have principals participating in this webinar today who are at different stages in their career, and this is sometimes a very hard mountain for principals to climb. And then even for those principals who have been principals for some time, if they leave their current building and go to a new building, many times it's like starting all over again to establish what works for students and for teachers. So talk to us a little bit about your leadership journey and establishing the professional learning communities in your school.
When I first came to Homestead, I came as a teacher from a sister school. I had been there for 10 years, and I came to teach here at Homestead, which was the coveted position in my opinion. The following year, I became the assistant principal in our building, and then 2 years later, our principal became the director of schools. When I came to this building, I realized what a baby I was, both in years, but also in years of experience. The average years of service at that point was probably 20-something years, and we did not even use email. So we were definitely not in a 21st century environment, and a lot of our educators that had so much vast experience were not eager to embrace this new baby telling them what to do. And it was difficult at first, but after the first year of just observing a lot, even though I had been here, and listening a lot, learning a lot, then the second year when I started to make changes, we had lots of conversations about the need for that. The vast, huge majority of people embraced that. There were a few not fans, I call them, that chose to go move to another building, just a very few. But we have a very strong family now that really try to help one another, and we're committed to this work and helping children.
Great. So as you said, you know, collaboration is key in all of this.
Yes, we also do vertical planning where our teachers go and observe another teacher either above or below them, and we have collaborative teams, and every person serves on some sort of team, either family involvement or as a chairperson, attendance or character, whatever that team is, and everyone contributes to help one another.
Great. So you've also incorporated a lot of the big thought leaders around your work, and another person you include is Rick Stiggins.
Yes, everything, the decisions that we make at Homestead, we try to make sure that is linked to research and use the best practices. And so many of the researchers that will be cited today are all in agreement of how powerful PLCs can be looking at that data through formative assessments and the work that we can do to help children as we are working together.
Great. So this is a very obvious theme in your school, you know, together we will succeed.
And we have realized for many years now that we are really only as strong as our weakest link, and so we have mentor teachers that work with our novice teachers. We have an instructional facilitator that coaches and mentors some of our teachers who have struggles in certain areas. We match our teachers using the evaluation model with strengths and areas of concern that we can truly be successful as we just work together and pull together.
Great. So another thought leader that you have incorporated is Doug Reeves.
We have a theme every year at Homestead, and this year our theme is digging deep and stretching forth so that we can encourage others and be able to do that. And so we've kind of adopted this theme of gardening based on Mr. Reeves' work of focus, efficacy, and monitoring. And as we talk about focus, I'll tell you a couple of the things that we are focusing on, primarily literacy this year, but we have committed that we will have no more than 6 main focuses and initiatives that we implement at Homestead to be successful. For efficacy, I think that everyone here is called. They believe that they can make a difference. And then the monitoring piece, that we make sure that people often do what you don't often do what you expect, but what you inspect. And so we have strengthened that this year. We are trying diligently to identify, remove, and avoid any kind of weed growing that takes away from the resources of helping children. And a lot of good things can happen. They look good, they sound good, they even make us feel good, but sometimes they just strangle the life out of us. And it's hard to get those deep roots uprooted, but it will choke the life out of everything if you don't have that focus and monitor things and then have that strong belief and do the things that you can actually control.
I love what you said about, you know, people don't do what you expect, they do what you inspect, you know, and it goes back to, you know, what doesn't get monitored does not get done, and so I think that's very, very important. But it can sometimes be a very difficult balance with everything that's on a principal's plate. And as we go through this, we'll talk about ways that you've been able to find that balance to really keep the important things in the forefront of what you do each and every day. So as far as weeding the garden, so you planted the garden, and so it demands constant upkeep. So talk to us about some things that you have in place as far as weeding the garden.
Well, with the vertical planting, that's one of the things that we do. We also do engagement checks, and we believe that one teacher on her feet is worth 100 per seat. So teachers are expected to be engaged with their students at all times, that they are surrounded with them, that they're facilitating learning. We are adamant about small group differentiated instruction. Later we'll talk about Hattie's research and the importance of feedback. One way that I have strengthened my own personal monitoring this year, I feel like I've always been pretty good at positive feedback, but this year I have also stepped up to do some constructive feedback a little bit more often, perhaps, than in the past. And I have a new assistant principal who has just joined our family this year, and he's still in training mode. He helps a great deal with all of the different aspects of this job. And my focus is to be in the classrooms and to be with children through the day, and that then gives me my second job at night when I'm doing the other principal duties that are required with paperwork and that kind of thing.
Very familiar to principals, I'm sure. So you've also incorporated some of the work of Jim Grant and others.
Yes, ma'am. We really try to individualize instruction and meet that individual student's needs, with our major focus being on literacy. and helping all of our students succeed. I used to have a sign in my classroom that said, "Welcome to success," and I still believe that all kids can be successful, maybe they're not the same level or in the same area, but when we do our academic rallies, we celebrate improvement, and we have a Bug Award, Bringing Up Grades Award, but we also celebrate character. We recognize students of character every month. We recognize we have a showcase of talents for students in the arts, and we just try to embrace that whole child so that we can brag on them at every opportunity.
Wow, Homestead sounds like a great place to be. So you mentioned that, one of your main focus points this year has been all about literacy.
Yes, ma'am. We want to promote that love of reading, and this is kind of our philosophy. It's about being healthy, and we have to have green beans and broccoli to be healthy, but all of us around here really like chocolate, and so we try to share that through the love of reading with our children, and we expose them to lots of different genres, lots of different avenues of reading with nonfiction as well as fiction. And then with our reading logs, we also encourage them to eat some chocolate, if you will. And as a middle school teacher, we had our specific goals in mind, and then all of them would write down chocolate. We read Junie B. Jones sometimes, and we always read The Best Christmas Pageant Ever. Every year that I was a teacher, I still get to go sometimes and read to children, and I really like that. And the data shows that the most important thing to promote reading growth is the average score, and our goal at Homestead is to maintain a 90% average correct on what the kids are reading independently, and that quiz score is 2.5 times more important than the book level and lots more important than points. We try to focus on the quality of what we're reading while we're developing that love of reading, and it's kind of like taking a test. We don't take a test just to take a test. We read because it's going to help our minds, and we kind of, another analogy that we use often at Homestead is with instruction and practice, that they're equal sides of an airplane, those wings on an airplane that makes it grow. Reading's important at Homestead, and that is our primary focus.
Wow. So when we talked earlier, you've talked about how you've really, tried to remove worksheet-driven instruction.
Yes, Marcia Tate is one of my favorite presenters and has shared lots of very powerful ways to engage students, and we try to incorporate movement and music and a lot of the ideas that she's given to us to replace those worksheets that are just so rote memorization, and we want all of our kids to be readers. Research tells us that you have to have 10,000 hours of practice to become an expert, and so we want all of our kids to have 10,000 hours of practice. When our little people first learn to read, they come to the office. They get in the treasure box when they read a story to me, and we call their mama and send them a note. And we really brag on them because that's a really big deal.
Wow. So again, this shows some of your work around literacy in your school.
Yes, we do believe that practice is absolutely imperative when we allocate 30 minutes every single day, 30 to 35 minutes of silent reading, independent practice. This is not a break for the teacher. They're doing individual conferences, encouraging students to choose books. They're monitoring their progress. And our goal then is for them to read within their zone of proximal development, maintaining the average percent correct of 90, which research says establishes the greatest growth for students.
Great. So again, you pulled in the work of Daniel Coyle.
Yes, ma'am. I had the privilege of hearing Daniel Coyle talk about his book, The Talent Code, which is one of New York bestseller, and he talked in there about deep practice requiring energy and passion and commitment. Made me a believer immediately. Loved this quote. where he referenced Tom Sawyer saying, does a boy get a chance to whitewash a fence every day? And we talk about home fun around here instead of homework because it's an opportunity. And we always want to have the teachers praising students' effort and their hard work. Somebody said one time that kids are kind of like elephants. We have to put out peanuts for them. And so that's what we do. We put mentors and models in front of our children, and we try to make that salt lick just as salty as possible to keep them engaged.
That's fantastic. So you had talked earlier of, about the work of Malcolm Gladwell and, his research on outliers.
Yes. The chances of me graduating from my background of poverty were pretty slim. College wasn't really going to happen, but every day I went to school, that teachers encouraged me and told me that as I continued to read that I could learn and that I could do it. They believed in me. Now every day I have that opportunity to do the same thing, to make a difference for a child.
Great. So, in talking about, what happens when we don't weed our garden, we see this beautiful garden here, and we all know if we don't pay close attention to it, and these things begin to happen to our beautiful garden. And so I really want to walk you into some of the really solid things that you do to make sure that your garden stays vital in your building.
Yes, we believe that self-fulfilling prophecy is real. We know what we can control, and we take that very seriously. We do formative assessment. We are diligent about the curriculum that we offer. And I feel like that my teachers are stepping up to be leaders more and more. And then we recognize that some things that we can't control. We can't control that so many of our children live with their grandparents, that some of them are homeless. And there's things that we can't control about legislation, testing. But there are things that we can control, and that's what we try to focus on.
Great. I know. I think every day we have a limited but great opportunity to really change children's lives, and in those 6 to 8 hours that we have them, it's so important that we're doing the right work. And I had asked you about, your school is very unique in that it's pre-K through 8, and I had asked you about, knowing this, you have this span in your building, and I asked the question, do you actually have kids that stay with you all the way from pre-K through 8? And you talked about your mobility and the ways that you address that.
Yes, ma'am. And we do have a large majority of our students that do stay as Bulldogs for 10 years, and we try to really invest in those families, and they help us a great deal. But when we checked mobility last year, it was close to 30%. We were very alarmed by that. Perhaps that was the year before, because last year then we implemented a program that was a welcome to the Bulldog Family Program. So whenever new students arrive, that there's an administrator, or the instructional facilitator, or someone in this building shows them around, helps them to be comfortable with the layout, because our building is made up of little cottages and is quite spread out. We then get them connected to a Bulldog Backers representative. We have a representative in each classroom that meet monthly, and we try to make sure that they have that contact information. And then that person will follow up with a phone call. We will follow up with a note, and then after they're here for at least 1 month to 6 weeks, then we give them a token, a little Bulldog token that says Excellence is Homestead, to solidify that they're now officially part of the family. So we've really tried to reach out to them and pull them into the fold.
Great, and I think, one of the things we talked about yesterday, when you talk about mobility, it's not always a matter of, kids leaving and going to another school and you never see them again. And I think one of the key characteristics, especially of children in poverty, they move back and forth a lot. They may be back and forth within your own individual school several times while they're in their school career. And so talk to me a little bit about some things that you've put in place to really communicate with your feeder schools, to really, you know, monitor and make sure that children have the least restrictive transitions as they move back and forth for reasons that are not their own.
And unfortunately, we do have students that, you know, when families can't pay the light bill or the rent, that they move. And yesterday we had a meeting with a family that his child had been absent a little bit more than we like, and I had called and asked him to come in and meet with us. And that child had been at a sister school a few years, had come here for a year, had moved back to that other school, and had come back to us, and is struggling a little bit behind. We have also tried to work with other schools within the county to establish a county pacing guide so that we can offer the same curriculum and information to the students as they're making these transitions. We work closely with our high school feeder school. My son is actually a teacher on staff there, and I tell him who my hard cases are and tell him he's responsible to get them graduated. But my 8th grade teachers also do collaborative work with the math teacher works with the algebra teacher and ELA teachers, and they have visited each of their classrooms back and forth so that we know what the expectations are. My teachers have worked through backward planning, and we have honest conversations annually that say, this is what I expect from you, as changes are within the faculty and staff of different grade levels. And so we try to, again, capitalize on people's strengths and weaknesses to help one another, but we're pretty honest. We have a data room that all of this is kept in, and we're pretty blunt honest with one another, but it's always in an effort to help. It's not ever, you know, a hammer to beat anybody up.
Right. So I know that this is a quote and saying that we're all very familiar with as educators, and so, you know, it's very important to come back and revisit this because of the challenges that we face, but this really helps center us and really provides us with, I think, our compass and our true purpose in schools. So we talked about with what are your students living in. You described, you know, some of the situations that your students encounter on a day-to-day basis in your school. So as far as digging deeper, you talked about how that's something that you really pressed on this year, to go beyond the surface and really digging deeper in everything that you do in the building. And so let's talk about a little bit about your data analysis process that you take in your school.
We do the screening reports. We do screening 3 times a year using STAR, which has been adopted by our county. And from that information, I pull out our RTI charts, and those are distributed to every person in the building, special area, music, library. Everybody gets them, all the parapros, so that when they're working with children, they know who is behind. We look at data more we do look at the data as a mirror giving us that information, but more as a window where we can see where we can grow and where we can get to. Our goal as RTI national recommendations are to have 80% of our students at benchmark. We look at that every month, at a minimum every month, and then more often during our PLCs, but one time a month the instructional facilitator goes through and does the data analysis in a deeper dive, and we look at those bubble kids and work with our RTI to meet those needs with progress monitoring every couple of weeks.
So you had talked about your universal screener that you use, and I had asked the question, you know, is this something that is driven by your district, or was this a universal screener that you and your school came up with on their own? So talk a little bit about, you know, Tennessee and their work with universal screening.
Well, we at Homestead screen at the minimum 3 times a year, but lots of our teachers will do it the 4th time prior to the state test. But basically, you lump all the kids into this funnel, if you will, and then you separate them out. and then you will be able to determine if students are at that 40th percentile, which is the baseline here, and then the 26th to the 39th percentile would be that on-watch group that could kind of go either way. And then we look at meeting the tier recommendations of our state. Tier 3, which is the lowest tier, at below the 10th percentile, we're obligated to do a 3-to-1 ratio with intensive interventions for them 45 minutes a day. And for Tier 2, again, the 45 minutes a day, and that is a 5-to-1 ratio. So that's when we're doing universal screening, it's kind of all hands on deck. Our third grade teachers have assistants, for example, like with our technology teacher and then the RTI and the special ed person. They will all combine, and we do Bulldog enrichment, we call it, throughout the day.
Wow. So you touched on, the very deep progress monitoring that you do in your school, and we can see from this slide, I mean, you hit every stakeholder in the building, from looking at student accountability, reporting to parents, making sure that teachers have the resources that they need, and that those faculty and grade level meetings that I can presume, I'm sure correctly, that are very instruction driven.
Absolutely. We try to look at all of the data possible. We don't depend on one data point. We honor that teacher professional judgment as part of that data review. We talk about our goals, and we kind of tease and say, you can be driving 80 miles an hour, but if you're going west, you're never going to get to the Knoxville Mall. And so we need to know where we're headed, and these things help us to get there.
Great. So again, touching on the various levels of accountability that you have in your building.
And we do we really try to celebrate everything that we possibly can, and that might mean that I take Cokes around and do like a Coke drop-in and celebrate. The kids will remind me if I haven't honored them in a while, and they'll tell me on bus line, and they'll say, do you know how many books I've read? And I'm like, oh, well, I was looking at that, and I'll say, you remind me. They do keep us accountable, too, because they do, we always have a big celebration at the end of the year as part of that accountability, and the kids, this year it is about splashing into learning for them, and so the team has promised them that I'm going to go water skiing. I don't know how to do that, but they think that will happen.
Wow. So, in this slide we really talk about the importance of pushing people out of their comfort zone to really expand and to empower.
Yes. It's kind of like we talk about that butterfly and that metamorphosis, that little bug working so hard to get out of the chrysalis, and it's not always comfortable. Challenge is not always comfortable, but it's certainly worthwhile.
So you've talked about, and this slide shows the proof in the data of how your hard work has paid off.
We always look at this data. This is also posted in our lobby, and it's just a conversation. Again, it's not about beating people up, but we talk about that, the picture being that we want it to be wider and higher green, that 40th percentile, we look at this as a house, and that 40th percentile, that black line of benchmark, is really not good enough, because that would be kids crawling around on the floor, and our goal is to have our kids, pushing toward the roof through the attic, not down there glossed up in a basement somewhere. So that's what we look at when we look at our STAR data.
Great. So this slide reflects what many of us know, as educators, what really good quality instruction is comprised of. And so, really noting, the biggest gain is in that 90% range of teaching others. As you mentioned, being the sage on the stage with that 5% lecturing, I mean, that's all you get is a 5% effect in that. So again, this is very important for, I think, teams to keep in mind as they're planning lessons and really trying to figure out, what is the best mode of delivery of instruction that's really going to have a high impact on kids. So I know that your school does a lot of action planning to back up a lot of the work. So would you talk to us a little bit about the action plans that you have in place?
Everything that we do is based on basically a couple of questions. We ask ourselves what is best for this individual student, what is best for our school, and we try to make all decisions based on that. When we establish our school improvement plan goals, we revisit those at faculty meetings during PLCs, and we talk about that ongoing. We do analyze our data from the state every year. We try to get that balance going of instruction and practice. And we look at that data as not just numbers, but we look at that as one youngin' at a time making a difference for them as we invest in their lives.
Great. So as far as your school improvement plan goals, again, you are really emphasizing digging deeper to really make a difference with kids.
Absolutely, and that's what it's all about. I do believe that success breeds success, and that the more that we can help our students improve, the better off they'll be.
Great. And again, we talked about John Hattie's research earlier in the webinar, and so he is someone who has done great work around meta-analysis of instruction and best practice in schools.
John Hattie is a phenomenal man, and he continues to do research as we speak, revisiting all of the data that he's collected, and we have tried to, when we're gaining our focus, trying to make sure that what we're doing that impacts learning is getting the biggest bang for your buck. And those things would include like having high expectations that we do, and having small group instruction and providing feedback for our students, always with this 0.40 average effect, meaning a year's growth from Hattie's research.
Great. And a favorite of NASP is Todd Whitaker. I know I have quite a few Todd Whitaker books on my shelf.
He is just a very funny man. I really enjoy listening to him, and we've had the opportunity to hear him more than once. But it's important that we set realistic and high expectations, and that we guard our instruction time, and we do that bell to bell. We have a couple of minutes of the morning that we brag on students. We do a daily memo for faculty and staff so that they know what's going on. But high expectations, that's just confirmation of Hattie's work as well.
Great. So you featured a part of this book, Through the Cracks. Can you talk a little bit to us about this?
This is a little allegory about what happens when children fall through the cracks, and that is our goal. We use, the No Child Left Behind has now become the new ESSA, and there's lots of different reasons that kids fall through, but we just want to make sure that we do everything possible to prevent that from happening. And so I guess we do that work like through our collaborative teams and through our PLCs and the work that we do looking at individual children one at a time.
Great. So again, the things that you put in place with making sure that no children fall through the cracks, setting, very high and realistic goals. You build unity through your collaborative teams. It is so obvious that you pay a great deal of attention to the culture in your building, and it seems like you have enlisted all of your major stakeholders within the building and outside the building. But I think the bottom line in this is that you have figured out some really great ways to connect with students.
And that would be our priority, is that we want our kids to feel safe here, be willing to take risk, and that goes to that relationship with them. And we do try to embrace the community in helping us to help our children. We meet with our Bulldog backers every month, and there's a representative from every classroom invited, along with community helpers, community businesses, and students are also part of that. And then we work hard so we can party hard.
That's always the important piece. So
yes.
The quantum learning piece.
This just goes to the celebration a lot, and we try to incorporate some really fun learning, like with music and movement and things like that, that also backs up what Marcia Tate said. But it's also about that really high return when you're getting positive or constructive feedback. All of it kind of meshes together.
Right. So I want you to take some time to talk about this this picture that we have just displayed.
My mama went to be with the Lord about 6 years ago. I was born the youngest of 8 children, and my daddy died when I was 18 months old. Mama taught us to work really hard. I think a lot of people can relate to this story of being raised by a single parent and in poverty, and it's important for me to give Mama credit because she was a very strong woman who taught us all how to work hard, to respect other people, to leave every place better than I had found it. I had those teachers who believed in me, but my mama really believed in me. I was the first in my family to graduate college. Probably should have been a statistic, but Mama taught us that success means working hard to try and then put a little oomph behind it. That's Appalachian dialect for hard work.
That's great. And, you know, and we talked earlier about, you know, it's very important for leaders to know themselves deeply, and what we have experienced and what we have lived definitely shows through in our leadership and how we interact with others and our expectations of others. And so I think this is just an incredible story about you. And in the short time that I have come to know you, your mother did a very good job.
Thank you. I do appreciate this opportunity today of just sharing with others. I feel like I have been blessed and need to bless others, that my territory continues to be enlarged, that I can reach out and make a difference for more than my 800 here at Homestead, but across the nation.
Great. So again, Robin, I really want to thank you for being here with us today to share your leadership journey. And so what our participants will see now are some discussion and dialogue questions that we won't have time to go in today, but as we shared with you earlier, you can download this presentation and, you know, pull these questions and have some dialogue with your colleagues around this. And so one of the questions that I do want to focus on this slide is, you know, and you talked a little bit about this, is describe a little bit, and we talked about this probably a couple of hours before we started the webinar. Describe the process that you took from moving from a lone soldier to really building teacher leaders in order to work smarter and not harder. We both acknowledged, I was a principal of 2 elementary schools, and I remember in my first principalship, and as I was taking my classes to get my administrative endorsement, I had many professors tell us that the principalship is a lonely job, and I can remember thinking, what? How can it be? You have people around you all day, every day. How can it be a lonely job? And once I was in the job, I would say about 3 months, and I had the world crash around my ears one evening, that's when I got it, that it can be very, very lonely. So talk about the process you took in understanding this and dealing with this to make you a better leader.
Well, coming up and being friends with a lot of the people, it was a transition to now become their supervisor and do evaluations and that kind of thing. I have learned that I have 2 ears and 1 mouth on purpose so that I can listen more than I talk, which is not my strength area by no means. I have also surrounded myself with 5 accountability partners who kind of keep me straight. When I'm making decisions, I go to them. When I have hard decisions to make about hire, and during the hiring process, they will sit with me on the team and help me make that decision. They serve as mentors for our new teachers, our novice teachers. One of them is quite vocal, and she said to me, make sure that we're all on the train before you take off, Robin. And pretty straightforward things that they tell me. They usually do it very nicely behind the closed door. They don't do that publicly. But they have surrounded me and made me a better teacher and a better leader, because I have learned that I can delegate and trust them to complete things, which is also another difficult area for me. But it is lonesome sometimes, and it's really good to reach out to other leaders. And I do have some close friends that are leaders here in our town, but I've also made many friends throughout the country in my travels that I just wouldn't hardly take anything for.
That's great. So I think that another thing that principals come to realize is that many times they are dependent on to be what we call, in quotes, the first responder in a building for anything that happens. And so that can really wear on a leader after a while. And so talk to me about how you established other people in your building that your staff would go to first before coming to you.
We do have PLC leaders and grade level chairpersons, and we have a chairperson for each of the collaborative teams, and all that information is shared at faculty meetings. And so I try to encourage them to check with their team, because that's why they're with that team, is because people can help them. They also can go to their mentor, especially if it's a novice teacher. And Mr. Wittenberger, the assistant principal, he is also available. The instructional facilitator is kind of matched up with some teachers that just need some extra coaching, and so she also is in my place a lot of the time as I just continue to do my work. I'm trying. There was one thought I hadn't, it left me.
Oh, that's okay. No, I think you captured it beautifully. You know, as I said, sometimes that's very difficult, especially for new principals, because they're looked upon as the fixer of all things, and so it's very, very important that first responders are established throughout the building, just to keep that balance in a building and really not burn a principal out.
I think that's really true.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, please go ahead.
I was just going to say that that's really true, and one of those accountability partners came to me early on in my first year and said, Robin, we don't really want you to fix it, we just want you to listen. And that was very wise advice for me, something that I have tried to retain.
Right. I just think by nature, the people who go into education, and especially those who aspire to the principalship, to me, they are naturally inclined to be fixers. I've just seen it over and over, time and time again. You know, and as I said, you know, it's very important for a leader to understand themselves. And I know in my own personal family, many times I was turned to as the fixer whenever there was any question around family issues. And so really being able to have that balance so that you can be really successful in your job, which will also help you be very, very responsive in your life as well. So I totally get where you're coming from with that. So For our participants today, here are some additional resources that you can find about the topics that we've talked about today, as well as some other things. I encourage you to visit our NASP website, as well as the Wallace Foundation organization website. You will find a wealth of information around leadership. And I also want to remind everybody to please save the date of July 6th through 8th and come visit us in National Harbor, Maryland, which is right outside Washington, D.C., for our national conference. You will again hear some of the many things that we've been talking about in these webinars. There is a strand on principal leadership that the Wallace Foundation will be a part of presenting on at this conference, as well as numerous other opportunities. We've really tried to look at the continuum of leadership and the principalship as we plan these sessions at the national conference. I am sure that we will see Robin there. As a matter of fact, she's going to be a presenter for us, and so I really look forward to connecting with her again. And Robin, I would really like to thank you again for participating in this webinar.
It has been my pleasure. Thank you so much. It's been great to work with you.
Great. Okay, everybody, have a great evening, and thank you again for participating in this webinar.